Who that
This
is?
is my baby daddy.
Who that
This
is?
is my baby daddy.
Who that
This
is?
is my baby daddy. What?
Who that
This
is?
is my baby daddy.
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 Who that is?
Jack, ain't no problem.
Who that
This
is?
is my baby daddy.
Who that
This
is?
is my baby daddy.
Who that
This
is?
is my baby daddy.
Who that
This
is?
is my baby daddy. What?
Who that
This
is?
is my baby daddy.
Who that
This is
is?
my baby.
Hey y'all, so I'm back with another video, and this is going to be a long one, so I just want to jump right into it. As y'all can see by the title, we're going to be talking about baby mamas in broken homes. In the past, before having children, women often got to know the man that they were with. Sometimes they would introduce him to the family, and there was a process that went before they would even get together, where the woman will vet his behavior and his character. In some cases, he would ask her for her hand in marriage, and he would provide cows, pigs, things like that as part of traditional marriage customs. Now, some people changed that, and then the marriage customs was providing money for a wife, but that's not right. Right thing would do is to provide food or homes, anything that the family could use to sustain their life, but not actually buy a person. After all of this will happen, then they will have children. However, today, people like Nick Cannon have earned a nickname Father Abraham due to the staggering amount of women that he's impregnated all at once, simultaneously.
Is it more that you have a cream pie fetish, or do you have a fertilizing egg fetish?
Everybody says, like, I don't know how to pull out a driveway.
Many of us might wonder, why would anybody choose to partake in a relationship with a man who has 9 children?
Is this a myth or is this true? That after 10 kids you don't have to pay child support?
That's true. The way it works is like after 10, the court can basically say he can't afford to pay child support. Or because he is who he is, they could say, we know you can afford X amount for each household.
But as y'all can see by the title, that's exactly what we're going to be talking about. Baby mamas and broken homes. A baby mama is a slang term for a mother who is not married to her child's father. This term, associated with African Americans originally, coming from Jamaican Creole and finding its way into hip-hop music. Today, the term baby mama has become a common part of mainstream media, and it's often used as a gendered stereotype that disproportionately affects Black women. It refers to a woman who is often Black and has children outside of marriage and is perceived as a single mother struggling to raise her children. This stereotype stigmatizes Black women, blaming them for their socioeconomic challenges while ignoring the systemic issues like poverty, limited access to quality education, and the effects of mass incarceration that contribute to the high rates of single motherhood in Black communities. Over the past few decades, societal norms around marriage and family structures have shifted, and the stigma of being a single mother, especially among the wealthy, has diminished. Celebrities like Ari Fletcher, Jada Wada, Rihanna.
Rappers with the most baby mamas, part 1. Let's get it on, bro. In first place, we got that man, NBA YoungBoy. At the age of 21, he got 8 baby mamas. Like, he ahead of the game right now. Next, we got Lil Durk. He got 5 baby mamas at the age of 28. He busted too.
All publicly embrace motherhood outside of marriage, helping to normalize it in the mainstream culture. Having a child outside of wedlock may often represent a form of independence and control. Many women in entertainment have financial means to take care of the child. We understand that. So their economic freedom allows them to make decisions about motherhood without the traditional pressures or expectations of marriage.
If y'all don't know, I'm the 3rd one, and this is his 6th child. Someone said, ooh, right, couldn't have been me. All right, till a rich nigga put that pressure on you.
Rich Black women and this phenomenon are not the only ones engaging. Regular Black women, like mothers, sisters, cousins, aunties, friends, often fit into this narrative as well. Many Black people know someone who has had more children than they can afford. As a teacher, it's nerve-wracking to witness how often parents just will drop their kids off at school like it's childcare. With social media platforms like Instagram and TikTok, young women are exposed to glamorous portrayals of motherhood, where influencers showcase mommy culture, through themed gender reveals and extravagant baby showers. These portrayals make motherhood appear more trendy and desirable. Unfortunately, the emotional, financial, and social toll of single parenthood is not always part of the narrative that young women consume. This disconnect can lead to decisions that can overlook the challenges of raising children in today's economic climate.
You want to know what the worst part about being a single mom is you get robbed of a certain motherhood experience. It just doesn't exist for you when you're a single mom. You don't get to operate in a certain way because you're carrying a different type of load. And that, I think, is the most frustrating / heartbreaking thing, because it's just like, damn, if I had a different level of support, the way that I could run, the way that I could carry it. And props for how you carry the load that you have, but it's just like you sit there and you think like, oh, how great could I have been had I had the certain level of support that I deserved during pregnancy, during raising your children, whatever that looks like. It's just like, I don't know, sometimes I have that moment of reflection where I'm like, wow, not only did you like not show up, you stole something from me.
If you decide to speak up about this abhorrent behavior on the part of your fellow sisters, you will be chewed up. They will come out of the woodworks to defend their situations with these common arguments. In this part of the video, I will directly rebut these claims one by one. We'll explore my theory on why so many women are having children out of wedlock and inadvertently becoming single mothers. We'll look at how cultural shifts, historical influences, and societal pressures have led to the normalization of single motherhood, and why it's crucial to examine this phenomenon with a critical lens. Common excuses are,
no, I don't want to get married. I don't want to get married because I feel like men are not faithful.
While it's true that infidelity happens in marriages, it doesn't negate the importance of a marriage as a foundational family structure. Marriage provides legal, emotional, and societal protections that can benefit both parents and children. The issue of cheating exists in any relationship, whether you're married or not, but marriage offers a framework for accountability. The next will be women who get married still get divorced. Yeah, divorce happens, but it's not the default outcome of marriage. Statistics show that when many marriages are successful, the stability provided by marriage often benefits both partners and their children. Divorce should be seen as an option when things go wrong, but that doesn't diminish the value of marriage in creating strong families and providing long-term security. And I would say a lot of people divorce as well because we don't have a real idea of what a family structure is supposed to look like. And I'll go more into that later. Another common argument will be marriage is just a piece of paper.
Y'all be talking about marriage is just a piece of paper until they put you in that man obituary as his special friend. I put my daddy girlfriend in there as his loyal companion like she was a German shepherd.
Marriage is far more than a piece of paper. It is a legal contract that provides financial, emotional, and social benefits that cohabitation will never give you. Marriage creates a framework of commitment that signals to society and to the couple themselves that they are building a life together. It also grants legal rights related to property, inheritance, medical decisions, and child custody that are not automatically given in cohabitation. For instance, I want to use Lauren London as an example because she was engaged to Nipsey Hussle but not married at the time of his demise. Because they were not legally married, I'm sure that she had a hard time getting any benefits that he would have maybe had. His children, of course, they got the benefits. But because she was his fiance and not his wife, she wasn't entitled to anything. And that furthermore explains why women should be very wary about staying engaged for long periods of time. But this isn't about that. Another common argument is marriage doesn't make a difference from cohabitation. Go to our traditional African language, marriage means something more. It means a combining of families, lineages, alliances. It means that you are not alone. It takes a village to raise a child, and everybody understands this, but in traditional African culture, that was literal. For the last excuse I hear, and this is for the brothers out there, from a lot of brothers I hear, oh, I'm not ready to get married, or I don't have enough money or power.
Big Sean is opening up about why he and Jhené Aiko are not married despite being together for many years and sharing a child together. He did a podcast interview on Out of Context with Charlemagne the God, where Charlemagne straight up asked Big Sean why they aren't married and if he and Jhené had done one of those secret industry weddings. Big Sean laughed and said, no, there has not been a secret industry marriage. He continues to say, it's a little personal, you know what I mean? But just like, to be real with you, just like any people who have dealt with love, we've had our ups and downs, you know what I'm saying? And I think it's still finding the right navigation through it all. To me, marriage symbolizes like the best relationship. He continued to say that the idea of having to get married is almost a fear-based way of thinking, also mentioning that divorce rates are very high. But Sean says he would still get married. He continued saying, I would like to, and I don't like putting our personal business out there like that either, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done. This sparked the debate online of why some men are so comfortable having children with you, moving in with you, and even opening businesses together, but marriage is where they draw the line.
This is not a valid excuse. Our ancestors had far less wealth and influence than we do today, yet they still built families, schools, and communities even during and after slavery because unity was more valuable to them than fitting into a capitalistic system. Let's not pretend people are entirely unable to marry due to financial hardship. People were still marrying during slavery when marriage to other black people was illegal. They were still marrying. So the truth is, the only thing stopping many people is their own mindset. Americans often take their privilege for granted, and the lack of awareness shows that every day.
We've created a generation of narcissistic women. And what's happened is the rise of social media and the rise of online dating and the rise of feminism has taught women that they are not to blame for any poor choices. Every poor choice is glamorized. So if you want to be a sex worker, it's great. If you want to post in bikini pictures online, it's fine. If you want to be in with it, every poor choice is glamorized, and every internal reflection is seen as gaslighting yourself. So they've even got terms for internal reflection to prevent it happening. And so what will happen is they are trained to not reflect on themselves because we've been told we've been oppressed for so many years. Now it's time to make sure we project. And so we don't take any accountability. And as a result, when we get into relationships, if we don't feel completely soothed all the time, he must be a narcissist. He must be a manipulator. He must be gaslighting. He, rather than I. And unfortunately, we've got an online market that caters to that wounded woman, that caters to that entitled woman, and caters to that narcissistic woman. And it's so wild to me that so many women talk about narcissism, but the society today is just catering to narcissistic women.
Let me get on to these celebrities, because a lot of y'all are going to say, okay, that's all fine and dandy. So how did we get here? So we're going to get into that. These celebrities are clearly products of the socialist feminist movement.
I really do believe that modern feminism encourages male absence. It encourages it because it's become toxic. They use terms like toxic masculinity, right? And I say to myself, all of their examples of the idea of what it means to be a man now is toxic. They think, oh, this is a man. Masculinity is wrong. There's something inherently wrong with being a masculine man. And to me, I always say that it was toxic masculinity that saved me. You know, I had a healthy fear of my grandfather. Nobody played around with my grandfather. We still don't play around with my grandfather, you know, and it's just, there's a certain level of respect when you're in his home. There are rules. And because I had that healthy fear, I was, I guess, more responsive to that sort of authority when I had to go out in real life. You know, I believed in structure. And yet this version of feminism today, we have women that are basically promoting men should act like women, right? Mm-hmm. And women should act like men. There's all of this confusion. You can pick your gender, you can do what you want. And ultimately what I think it's doing is feeding into this idea of a breakdown of the family.
Promoting talking points reminiscent of Engels and Marx under the guise of advice. They're also contributing to the destruction of our family units by perpetuating the Jezebel stereotype, reinforcing the notion that black women are hypersexual and desiring of sexual violence. The guidance that they attempt to offer is often misguided and irresponsible, because how can you give advice on marriage while lacking a commitment to it yourself?
Well, I'd rather be a baby mama than be a miserable wife. Girl, majority of the women that be saying that, she ain't never been a wife a day in her life. She wouldn't know a good man if a good man stood in front of her and said, I'm a good man. Second of all, if she was a miserable wife, that had everything to do with her husband and nothing to do with marriage. Lastly, miserable wives can get spousal support. Ain't no such thing as baby mama and baby daddy support.
And while it's it's easy to hold women to task, as a woman, I also need to hold black men to task.
Is getting pregnant and having a child, is that not like considered like a serious thing anymore? Now, I can't call this baby mama culture because it takes two to tango, so I'm gonna call this broken family culture.
You complain about high divorce rates, yet many of you only see examples of divorce through TV. You say things like, women take half, while ignoring the fact that the woman beside you has supported you through difficult times and will continue to do so if you committed to her. If black men were more willing to admit that their fear of commitment often stems from insecurities about their ability to provide, remain committed, or be faithful, it will lead to more honest conversations. Instead, many of you place the blame on women, viewing them as placeholders while you work on yourself, rather than recognizing the real issue lies within you.
Seriously, to all the women that you've encountered, ladies, I'm saying this. The reason why it's worked for you is because you have chosen and to prey on low-functioning women who don't have the emotional intelligence. No, I'm going there. Who will allow you to do that, Nick? And when I say allow, it's not a control thing. When I say allow, I'm not saying that she sits across you and says, this is what you won't do, you're crossing a boundary.
Because first of all,
low-functioning woman will allow you to function low with them, Nick. You could not function that low.
So this is
Nick,
everyone's low functioning at some point in their life.
You cannot function low with a woman of my functioning.
This not only undermines the institution of marriage, but also perpetuates a cycle of dysfunction within our community. Y'all are the leaders of our community, and you are the one perpetuating this behavior. So by normalizing unhealthy relationship dynamics and failing to acknowledge the importance of stable family structures, they further erode the foundations that are crucial for nurturing family.
And I'm telling you, black men are responsible for her being masculine because we have not helped her raise them children.
I am
and
not.
when I say help them raise them children, I don't mean you as the stepdad.
No, I
mean you as an active member in the community. She got masculine because she had to become masculine in order to deal with the rape, the abuse, the domestic violence, the disappointments that men had in her life, and also raising those kids and have to take care of herself all at the same time. The black woman has been the be-all, end-all in our community for half of a century, and now we want to turn around and say because she didn't do it perfectly enough or remain feminine enough when she had to absorb our responsibilities plus her own, that's insensitive and disingenuous.
There was a time when we protected each other against the forces of white supremacy. We understood that our strength lay in unity, and maintaining the family structure was paramount.
They did not tell us that all of that, being my own person and I'm independent, would lead to separation, loneliness, celibacy, and lesbianism. They didn't tell us that if you give up the man, you're going to take one of these things and it's worse and it will destroy your nation. They made us think that it was some kind of glorified position to brag about the fact that I got my own job, my own credit card, my own car, so I don't need no man. I don't even know how we got that mixed up. Ain't none of that got nothing to do with being with no man. We have some serious relationship problems that nobody has been able to address us on because everybody wants to pretend that this is not going on. Over 60% of our women are single, widowed, separated, or divorced. They don't have a man.
However, the rise of individualistic ideologies prioritizes personal gain over community well-being, only deepening the divide between us. Our struggle is co-ed. Black men also face the challenges of single fatherhood, often left to raise children alone by irresponsible partners. They endure emotional, physical, and sexual abuse as well, and experience the harsh realities of colorism, racism, and discrimination. Just as we fear the threats posed by men in society, black men fear other men as well. The attack on the family structure is an attack on our logic. These women are laid up with the utmost degenerate group of, excuse my language, niggas.
I just wanted to say it like that.
They be egotistical, narcissistic, deadbeats, killers, kidnappers, sex traffickers. You know they ain't making no noise when it comes to dismantling a white supremacist structure either. They're the ones that's really keeping it intact. Make the intentional choice to procreate, not even considering their gene pool at this point, which they're now mixing in with some questionable, dumb DNA. Most of these women might have ended up with the unsatisfactory partner anyway, but now they find themselves with affluent men who mimic the traits of the Pookies and the Ray Rays that you grew accustomed to seeing.
You don't hug your baby daddy?
Hell no, he better not touch me, girl.
Really?
Then they come at you and they say they're happy as baby mamas. They're happy to be a single mother. We know if they are, it's because of the negativity that social media sells. and the media often elevates baby mamas who are hypersexual or conventionally attractive, regardless of their partner's lack of integrity. This behavior is detestable. Some mothers are mimicking hypersexuality in front of their children, making it difficult to maintain appropriate boundaries between their personal lives and their role as parents. There was a time when we didn't see our parents in compromising situations. I know I didn't. If you saw your parents in a compromised situation, I feel sorry for you. Additionally, men are having children out of wedlock and are failing to fulfill their roles as leaders and as fathers. This neglect can lead to daughters being drawn to partners who reflect their father's problematic trait. Ignorance surrounding these issues is not being addressed. This is only perpetuating a cycle of dysfunction. It is especially concerning that we as Black people choose to sexualize ourselves. Given our history of sexual violence and exploitation, allowing harmful narratives to resurface and impact younger generations is unacceptable. Women like Jezebel, by oversharing personal experiences like revealing that she let Lil Baby sleep with her on the first night,
has the people shocked is the fact you admitted to sleeping with your baby daddy on the first night. Whew! Can you tell us?
Halle Bailey, who hopped on a song with DDG to sing about riding him all night, they're doing women a disservice. Since the rise of social media, we've seen a disturbing increase of sexual coercion in elementary and high schools, with many young women sharing that their first sexual experience were not fully consensual. The over-sexualization of both women and men has a profound effect on the youth who are growing up in this environment. The normalization of such behaviors not only distorts their understanding of healthy relationships, but also contributes to a culture where boundaries and consent are increasingly disregarded. This trend poses serious risk to their well-being, highlighting the urgent need for more responsible representation of relationships and sexuality in the media. My argument is that there has been a clear and ongoing destruction of the Black family unit. Many people recognize how welfare programs, particularly those involving food stamps, historically discourage the presence of Black men in the home. Yet to argue that this phenomenon is not real and is not going on is simply misguided. The sexual revolution emphasized sexual freedom and autonomy, which had its benefits for white women. It failed to consider the structural disadvantages faced by Black women. The loosening of sexual norms and the decline of traditional marriage did not necessarily empower us, nor did it help us. We continue to grapple with economic and racial inequalities already. Consequently, many Black women have found themselves as single mothers without the financial or social support that they need. As you know, to understand the modern day effects, we have to look at history. It's crucial to understand today's issues. Many people in our community are caught in cycles of repeating generational curses due to misinformation and ignorance. So let's dive into the first part of this video, which is Black women's education on reproduction. Black women in America have only recently gained access to knowledge and resources about reproduction and sex, and many Black women still do not receive comprehensive sex education, which often neglects topics like consent, healthy relationships, and sexual health. We face cultural stigmas surrounding sexuality, which can discourage open discussions about sexual health, pleasure, and education. These stigmas can create barriers to seeking help or information. This is why for us, entering long-term relationships can serve as an escape from the traditional home environment or socioeconomic hardships. These relationships may provide emotional support or a sense of stability, even if they are not healthy or beneficial in the long run. We are also perceived as more mature than our peers. This leads to adultification, where we are treated as adults before we are developmentally ready. Parents in Black culture, they themselves be trying to kick you out at like 18. This cycle can pressure them into engaging into adult relationships, including sexual relationships, before they fully understand the emotional or physical implications, all in order to survive. As Black people, we have been systematically misinformed about the crucial topics like family, sexuality, and race. During slavery, Black women, whether enslaved or free, were generally denied formal education in the United States, including education on sex, reproduction, and family planning. Enslaved women often learned about sex through oppressive and traumatic contexts, primarily through the realities of sexual exploitation, coercion, and violence. As a result, many were left unaware of the basic aspects of their own bodies, since white slave owners perpetuated harmful myths through ignorance, as well as often conflating fertility with beauty rather than understanding its link to ovulation. This misinformation started with a lack of education for Black people and the spread of false narratives by white individuals to justify their beliefs. Rape was rampant, and enslaved Black women had no autonomy over their bodies. They were dehumanized and treated as animals, valued only for breeding and sexual pleasure. Moreover, the law provided no protection against sexual violence. For instance, in George v. State in 1859, the Supreme Court of Mississippi ruled that a Black enslaved man could not be convicted of raping an enslaved woman because under law, it was only considered a crime to commit rape to a white woman. So, after prefacing our education on sexual reproduction, I now want to go into the nuclear family. We have to dissect our acceptance of the nuclear family into traditional African culture. In reaction to what was going on both at home and abroad in the 1940s, the 1950s marked a swift shift to a new type of domesticity. Insider reports that the idea of the nuclear all-American family was created in the 1950s and put an emphasis on the family unit in marriage. This time period saw younger marriages, more kids, and fewer divorces. The average age for women to marry was 20. Divorce rate stabilized and the birth rate was doubled. The nuclear family, which is a family group consisting of parents and their children, one or more, typically living in one residence, is in contrast to a single parent household or a larger extended family or a family with more than two parents. It is completely unnatural to us, this nuclear family. Our desire to assimilate into American culture became the first hit to the moral compass of our community. We as Black people come from communities of extended families, which consists of nuclear families and non-nuclear families, considered together. When extended family is involved, they also influences the children's development just as much as the parents would on their own. In an extended family, resources are usually shared among those, adding more of a community aspect to the family unit. This is not limited to the sharing of objects and money, but it includes sharing time. For example, your extended family will help you with babysitting if you need to pursue your career, and this will allow the parents to reduce their stress levels. The standard structure of the family in the post-war America consisted of a breadwinner male, his wife, who did the household chores and looked after the children. Families ate meals and went on outings together, and they lived in sociable neighborhoods. Parents paid close attention to disciplining their children, and live-in relationships were unheard of. In fact, girls stayed in their parents' home until they got married. They did not commonly attend college. Children became emotional rather than any economic asset for the first time. When we chose to trade in the kente cloth for the white dresses at our weddings, they knew it was a wrap. They got us. Nonetheless, the assimilation of Black people into the white nuclear family was the first mistake. Being that we had just endured 400 plus years of torture, we understand that enslaved Black Africans were often separated from their family and extended kinship networks when they were taken from their homes and forced into slavery. There was no nuclear family for us, and if it was allowed purely for the monetary purposes of the kidnapper. From the initial involuntary migration of African Americans to the United States, break of the family structure, living conditions were assembled based on enslaved people that lived in proximity to each other and changed as enslaved persons were bought and sold. This means that we were extremely disconnected from our family, and we took on an approach of a communal family of bringing in people who were not blood related but became our family through adoption. So like how we do today, we call people cousins that's not our cousins. That comes from that mindset. The continued need for the extended non-biological family continued throughout Reconstruction and Jim Crow because of the prevalence at which nuclear families were disrupted because of premature death, primarily of fathers, grandfathers, and other male figureheads. Many notable African Americans, like Earl Little, father of Malcolm X, who died while tied to rail tracks, and Emmett Till, whose father, Lewis Till, was lynched while serving in the U.S. Army, they were both raised by single mothers because of that. This helped to normalize within a culture and not blame or ostracize the woman for being a single mother. This breakdown of social norms had a significant impact on the acceptability of out-of-wedlock childbirth. Nowadays, while our men are not dying directly from lynching all the time, we still do have many lynchings that go on. We cannot ignore the fact that many families are left with single mothers due to death, incarceration, and poverty. This often results in Black women leading the household, which can lead to significant challenges for the children, including issues with education and behavior. When both the father and mother are absent, and considering that many Americans, especially Black individuals, tend to move away from their parents, it's reasonable to assert that at least 45% of Black people at the age of under 20, they're not living with their parents. This situation leaves children without the necessary support for basic needs, including emotional guidance and supervision. Consequently, many older siblings are stepping up to assist their mothers while she works. This is highlighting the need for family unity and support structures to be restored within our community.
I want to say this to the men so y'all can better understand what's really going on with us women. We are mentally, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually exhausted in motherhood, okay? The domestic labor falls on us, and we know that society goes by traditional roles, so a lot of the household deeds fall on the women. But for us we constantly have to be attentive to what our children need when they're sick, when they look like they're about to become sick, their education, their emotional well-being, them learning, their coping skills. This is all of everything that we are paying attention to. On top of loving our children, we're trying to find spaces to be able to love ourselves. On top of trying to create safety for our children, we're looking for safety and security within ourselves. And sometimes because of all of the expectations and obligations and burdens and the load on us, we can't find that safety. So we turn to our partner, and sometimes in our partner, because they resent us so much for the transitions that we have faced in our motherhood, we can't find safety with them as well.
This is just showing that most issues that you would hear by Black feminists is that they don't want to be doing all the domestic work. And my argument is that you chose to do all the domestic work. And our families chose to do all the domestic work, because instead of being a communal, loving, helpful family, a lot of us can't even get along with each other, which does make it hard to have that communal living. But I would say take somebody you love, take somebody you like, and y'all build that community for yourself. Because there's no way that two people or one person, while one works, is going to be able to take care of so many people. And if you do, I commend you, but it's very hard. That's why we came from communal families. My next point I want to draw on is the idea that Black women are sexually lewd. This goes into our adultification and the Jezebel stereotype. So another reason baby mamas and baby daddies are so prevalent today is the long-standing belief that Black people are inherently sexually lewd.
This place you had sex at?
A balcony in Cabo.
You like your hair being pulled?
I do.
You like a nigga put his thumb in your booty?
I do.
Spit?
Yeah.
In your mouth?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna say yes. You like girls?
Sometimes.
Last time you dealt with a girl?
Last December.
Last December. I'm gonna say yes.
What's the freakiest thing you ever done?
I do whatever for real, like, to like a guy.
Whoever, whatever, whenever.
I'm super duper freaky, like, I really do whatever. Except, like, I don't even want to say it on camera for real.
Oh, you can say it, go ahead.
No, like, no. Okay, the freakiest thing I did is probably, like, eat a nigga ass and, like, suck his toes.
I'm kind of cool on that.
I knew it.
I'm gonna say no.
This perception predates the institution of slavery in America, as European travelers who went to Africa often misinterpreted the semi-nudity of the indigenous groups as lewdness, laying the groundwork for harmful sexual stereotypes. This misrepresentation gave rise to the anti-Black sexual archetypes, such as the portrayal of Black males as brutish, potential rapists, and Black women as the Jezebel, depicted as hypersexual and insatiable. The Jezebel stereotype rationalized the sexual exploitation of Black women during slavery, allowing white men to justify their acts against them. In contrast, the brute stereotype left a lasting mark on Black men's reputation, portraying them as inherently savage, animalistic, destructive, and criminal, often deserving of punishment, even death. This caricature paints Black men as hideous, terrifying predators, targeting vulnerable victims, especially white women. This stereotype contributes to the misconception that black men are not sexualized as well. Too often, the narrative around young black boys focus on their portrayal as sexually aggressive, criminally assaultive, overshadowing the reality that they can also be victims. Consequently, black boys, they're often overlooked in discussions of sexual violence. So it's a few things I want y'all to understand. From the moment we set foot on European soil, we were immediately subjected to propaganda and programming that we were promiscuous and that black men were violent and that they were rabid and rapists. These stereotypes were deliberately constructed to dehumanize and justify the brutal treatment of enslaved Africans. During slavery, black men were often forced onto black women. They were coerced into procreation under the control of slaveholders. While some of these couples may have fallen in love, the forced unions undoubtedly created a deep trauma for both partners. The institution of slavery manipulated these relationships, stripping them of agency and autonomy. Both black men and black women were hypersexualized by Europeans. This over-sexualization became a tool of control, reinforcing racist ideologies that persist today, warping the idea of the image of the black man. This opened the door for years of exploitation for black women and men by everyone who could. The black woman's body was never hers. She had little control over much. Enslaved black women were frequently forced into reproductive roles to maintain the growth of the slaves. As a result, enslaved women were encouraged to reproduce through various incentives. They were given land, given a new dress, they were giving pig. Young black girls were often subjugated to anticipatory socialization, where they were encouraged to engage in sexual activity in preparation for their role as breeders. This was interpreted as evidence of insatiable sexual appetites, further entrenching stereotypes. And it wasn't just black women, of course. I will cite a book called The Delectable Negro, which I want you all to read. And in The Delectable Negro, it shows crimes done against black men in slavery. But trigger warning, this content is very hard to hear. Enslaved boys were often ordered to remain nude, stripping them of their right to privacy and exposing them to constant vulnerability. Black men were raped just as much as black women by both men and women. The stigmatism of homosexual behavior has kept many accounts of male sexual assault from being recorded. In his article, The Sexual Abuse of Black Men Under American Slavery, Thomas Foster wrote that black manhood under slavery was also violated in other ways that are less easily spoken of then and now, namely the sexual exploitation of enslaved men. Foster also argues that while visual depictions of enslaved men's bodies often highlighted their athleticism, strength, and muscularity, this same imagery eroticized enslaved men's bodies in ways that fueled the physical abuses and sexual exploitation of enslaved men. This stemmed from the Mendigo stereotype, which was a stereotype of a sexually insatiable black man with a large phallus, invented by white slave owners to advance the idea that black people were not civilized but rather animalistic by nature. The real Mandinka people are also known for their rich culture, oral history, and social structures, which are far removed from the stereotypes imposed on our name. The distortion of the term Mandingo highlights how black people's identities and histories were often manipulated to serve racist ideologies. So black men were groomed to be procreating machines, and black women were groomed to just take it lying down. The behavior of nudity and hypersexualization proposed on all of us was far from natural. It was a construct rooted in a dehumanization of slavery. These practices conditioned black people into their roles designed to exploit their sexuality and reproduction, shaping perceptions that still show up today. We know this because despite slavery's encouraging promiscuity, many enslaved individuals sought long-term monogamous relationships. When allowed, enslaved couples would marry, and adultery was often generally frowned upon in our community. During Reconstruction, newly free individuals made a point of legitimizing their unions by holding mass marriage ceremonies and individual weddings, solidifying their commitment to one another. This clearly shows that even under the harshest conditions, black women and men chose to marry, and they opted for monogamy, seeking stability and continuity in relationships despite their forces working against them. I want to shift this conversation into socialism. I'm just going to be blunt and say socialism is what caused the destruction of black communities.
It matters how something is created. Well, you know, when I was a young entrepreneur, I had absolutely no idea how much and how influential intellectuals actually were. It's when I started to try and understand how is it that the world works? How is it that economies work? Especially, some of you don't know my story, but you know, I was born in Senegal, the west coast of Africa, and my family, like many African families, became economic migrants to Europe. This is another thing. I never understood how much ideas matter. Never. And I think so many of us out there, we're just out there living our lives. We don't understand that ideas matter so much. Back home, we made a fatal mistake 60-some years ago of siding with the wrong side of ideas. See, most people don't understand that when most African nations were getting their independences, we're talking late 50s, early 60s, what was happening at that time? People like you in this room know what was happening. At that time, we were at the height of, socialist ideas. I guess it's Dick Cornwell, who was Mises secretary. One of the first things he told me when he met me, he told me about how back in those times, you could fit all free market people in one phone booth. How far have we come? So, but it is during those times that we supposedly got our independence. But what does it mean? It meant that you were at this time where, as my people were becoming free, the ideology en vogue was socialism. And at the same time, they're looking, and it was fighting with the Western ideology represented by, freedom, and their economic system was capitalism, right? And so at that time, these two blocks, East, West, were fighting for influence, looking south. And at that point, my people said, look, you, the West, enslaved us, later colonized us. So surely, what is it that you're pushing for? We are not going to be for that. And at that precise moment in time, we made the fatal mistake to side with the Marxist socialists of our time. And this is how, as these African nations became free, all of these, presidents of these newly liberated countries were actually socialist presidents for most of them, the rest of them communist. People don't even remember this. But this is how we got to where we are. So 60-some years later, my country got its independence April 4th, 1960. So today, 62 years later, you look around and you're like, how come you guys are still so poor?
Family values are put last in our communities, and this is because of socialism. Socialism, in theory, advocates for collective ownership and management of resources to create a more equitable society, where property and productions like factories, tools, and infrastructure are shared by the community, rather than controlled by private individuals. But I argue that instead of fostering independence, socialist policies can create cycles of dependency that hinder generational progress, potentially reinforcing socioeconomic stagnation. Additionally, the focus on assimilation within established structures like education and employment systems, historically controlled by white institutions, can result in young Black individuals navigating spaces that don't fully reflect or support their cultural identity and community-focused values. Out of socialism emerged various ideologies, including socialist feminism, which is a particularly relevant conversation when discussing the implications of radical socialism on societal structures, including marriage. Integration of socialist feminism into our families, lives, and societies has roots in philosophical inquiries dating back to 1845, when thinkers began analyzing the implications of aligning with capitalistic or fascist systems. They warned that such alignments can lead to the fragmentation of family structures. In The Condition of the Working Class in England, Friedrich Engels explored how industrial capitalist systems disrupt traditional family dynamics. He described the harsh realities of overcrowding, poverty, and the labor exploitation that resulted in a disordered sexual and family lives. Economic instability pushed many working class individuals into precarious situations, leading to early pregnancies and children born out of wedlock. By aligning with Engels, black feminists may have misconstrued his warnings about the dangers of assimilating to capitalistic structure, because they did exactly what he warned them not to do. In their rush to embrace socialism, they ultimately undermined the family unit and rejected the traditional marriage and family structures.
I remember learning about radical feminist theory and the concept that all heterosexual relationships with men are inherently misogynistic and patriarchal. And at first I thought they were bugging, but what I think is even more bugging now is the idea that that belief is radical. When I first read it, I read it in grad school, I thought it was a little bit extreme, like, ain't no way all heterosexual relationships. But now I'm like, no, like, of course, obviously, misogyny is embedded in our system. We're indoctrinated by it. If women, right, we have internalized misogyny, internalized patriarchal beliefs, why the hell wouldn't men when they benefit from those things? And not just romantic relationships. I mean, romantic, sexual, platonic, familial, co-worker relationship. All of those inherently have a level of misogyny that needs to be unpacked in the same way that white people inherently have some racism that they're gonna have to unpack. But then
the socialist feminist movement sought to challenge the family unit, a structure white people themselves fought to preserve. So during this period, some black women activists influenced by these ideas promoted celibacy and discouraged relationships with men. Critics of the traditional marriage argue that it's rooted in patriarchy, historically treating women as property and keeping them subdued. They highlight how unpaid labor, childcare, cooking, cleaning, emotional labor, and family planning has been often an unrecognized foundation for men's success. What's ironic, however, is that instead of criticizing the men who thought it was a good idea to separate us from our extended families and limit caregiving to just 2 people, or the patriarchal structure of America that benefited Europeans through the nuclear family model, we have often criticized black men, a system that was framed as a positive for him. They told the black man to get a family. They told the black man to get a wife. They said, do it alone. You don't need no family. And they actually took his family away from him. While the lack of sexual education and protections against domestic violence and promotion of unhealthy relationships based on finance affects all women, black women are disproportionately affected. I understand that us black women have always had to navigate and combat stereotypes that dehumanize us. And these stereotypes cannot be separated from our identity as women in America. But historically, the fight for change has often been co-opted by white political figures, which has led to a struggle for black women to carve out our own intellectual spaces. Instead of addressing issues through the lens of our unique experiences, which we have frequently found ourselves used as tools to support the agenda of others, particularly white women who sought to advance their causes while neglecting the specific needs and struggles of black women. First wave feminism. So this is about how we have been often used as tools to get white women law. I'm not going to go into it in detail, but just know that black women didn't benefit from the Roe versus Wade law, from the voting law that was passed for women. We didn't benefit from that. We actually couldn't vote until a whole 40 years later. So all that protesting we did for us, it benefited us within the community and, you know, within those spaces. But within white community, we were always excluded. So this is evident in the first wave of feminism. Key figures like Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton were part of the American Equal Rights Association. This was formed in 1866 alongside Frederick Douglass and other activists. Their aim was to secure voting rights for black people. Tension rose quickly regarding the prioritization of these 2 goals, leading to black women's concerns being sidelined. Susan B. Anthony herself prioritized race in her approach to suffrage, demonstrating a clear race-first mentality. She famously stated, "If you will not give the whole loaf of suffrage to the entire people, give it to the most intelligent. If intelligence, justice, and morality are to have precedence in the government, let the question of women be brought up first and that of the Negro last." So it was clear as day that she didn't want to support black people, and while we were sitting there rubbing elbows with her, she had no intent to help us. Second wave feminism, though, emerged in the 1960s, which extended into the 1970s as a response to women reverting to traditional roles following World War II. This wave was significantly influenced by the civil rights movement and sought to address issues beyond suffrage, including workplace equality, reproductive rights, and sexual autonomy. However, it's crucial to recognize that the first wave of feminism often overlooked the needs and struggles of Black queer women. So, as Audre Lorde articulated, white women frequently failed feminism by refusing to acknowledge and examining the differences among women, which led to the distortion of their experiences. So, Polly Murray, a Black queer feminist, civil rights lawyer, and priest, and co-founder of the National Organization for Women, played a pivotal role in civil, social, and legal organizations during the rise of Black feminist movements in the 1960s and 70s. Murray's work was influential not only because of her legal advocacy, but due to her theoretical contributions regarding the intersection of gender, race, and sexuality. She shared her experiences of Black womanhood, asserting that her identities could not be separated. This foundational belief fueled both her legal work and her activism. Today, feminists continue to uphold Murray's ideas about intersectionality. In her seminal paper, Mapping the Margins, Intersectionality, Identity Politics, and Violence Against Women of Color, she articulates a crucial point. When feminism does not explicitly oppose racism, and when anti-racism does not incorporate opposition to the patriarchy, race and gender politics often end up being antagonistic to each other, and both interests lose. This perspective highlights the need for an integrated approach to social justice that addresses multiple forms of oppression simultaneously. As the 21st century progressed, the focus of Black women evolved. The movement shifted into being predominantly grounded in the experience of Black heterosexual women to a more radical framework that emphasizes the importance of queer and trans Black individuals.
On top of men's behavior around me and to me, on top of that, and me getting smarter, I lost all attraction to men. Damn. Because my attraction was here. It was never physical.
Right.
It was never physical.
Yeah. It was mental.
So it's so easy for me to go to women because it's still not physical.
This evolution reflects a broader understanding of identity and the necessity of inclusivity within feminist discourse, ensuring that all voices are heard and that the fight against intersecting oppressions continue to be at the forefront of activism. My thoughts are, we often hear so-called educated voices repeating the same tired talking points about feminism, as if heterosexual relationships are inherently misogynistic. When people critique feminism or womanism, they're often met with a question of, what will we do?
It always becomes about feminism and why feminism is not working for Black women. Here's another question we need to consider. Okay, if feminism is not working for Black women, what framework of liberation for women, specifically what framework of liberation for Black women has worked out for Black women? Because if I brought up womanism, you probably have an issue with that too.
This lack of critical thought is actually mind-blowing. Many who claim to be informed don't actually read for context. They read to look good. And it's the same rigid black and white thinking as the idea of the only parties that exist is Democrat and Republican. Many have adopted the very perspectives of the colonizers and forgotten their ancestral ways. By aligning ourselves with reckless organizations, we became entangled in white politics, abandoning our own values. Black women fought for reproductive rights and OBGYN care, yet were mainly exploited by these advancements in the medical field, not truly benefiting from them. Time and time again, we've aligned ourselves with these groups that consistently prove they just don't care about the Black community. Just throwing around terms like intersectionality or creating Black named groups under white leadership doesn't change the fact that these groups were often intended to control Black populations. They were made to gentrify and kill us, like literally control the reproductive rights on Black people. Instead, the smart move would be to learn what our people did before colonialism, to understand how they honored unions, partnership, and women's reproductive rights. In many traditional African cultures, gender roles were balanced and women held powerful roles in political, spiritual, and economic spheres. Feminist principles were indeed present, but they looked very different from the European model, which was born out of resistance to restrictive patriarchal structures. African societies emphasized collective leadership, seeing both men and women as essential to the community's prosperity. For instance, in pre-colonial West Africa, the Yoruba people had a dual-sex governance system where men and women held political institutions. Women held authority and played key roles as traders, spiritual leaders, and warriors. Leaders like Queen Amina of Zazzau modern-day Nigeria, and Ya Asantewa of the Ashanti Empire in Ghana were legendary figures who commanded respect and wielded power. Queen Nzinga of Zamba even had a polygamous relationship where men vied for her attention, some fighting to the death. Additionally, matrilineal systems common in some African societies, such as among the Akan people of Ghana, ensured that the lineage inheritance followed the mother's line, reinforcing the matriarch's importance within a family and community. Women were also central in spiritual life, with goddesses like Oshun and Isis revered as symbols of fertility, wisdom, and power. The presence of priestesses and female diviners reaffirmed that spiritual knowledge and leadership were not only exclusive to men. Unlike European feminism, which developed as a response to restrictive patriarchal systems, African feminism was communal and integrated. It valued balance and harmony between genders, focusing on a collective strength that benefited everyone. To explain this further, I'm going to explain the marriage pattern itself in pre-colonial Africa. For Africans, this was one of the most important systems, or social institutions, symbolizing a living symbol of alliances between at least two communities. Therefore, divorce was never an issue of individuals, but of communities involved in a marriage. Love, as understood in many contemporary contexts, wasn't the primary driver for marriage at its outset. Instead, love developed as a part of mutual journey between partners. It was understood as a process that grew over time, built upon the shared responsibilities and bond formed within the alliances. This communal view of marriage reinforced social unity and stability across generations. The Longo is the name for a traditional African marriage alliance. In the Congo society, marriage is primarily a social contract created for the greater benefits of the community and its members. Through the family buta, social forces like norms, values, and ideals are transmitted, preserving the cultural integrity and cohesion of the community. Longo signifies far more than a personal partnership. It embodies a binding union between families, where the responsibility of nurturing, guiding, and educating the child is shared among extended family members and the entire community. This is how traditional marriage was approached. In this structure, there would be little need for feminism as we know it because everyone in the family contributes equally, reinforcing an organic sense of equality. By moving away from this communal model and towards smaller, isolated family units, we've opened the door for patriarchy to take hold, creating hierarchies and reducing balance of roles that were once integral to family life. This huge oversight has inadvertently prioritized individuality over the collective goals of reproductive justice and has emphasized a notion of sameness that overlooks the distinct needs of women. In the quest for equality with men, some feminists have downplayed the necessity for accommodations that consider biological differences, such as maternity leave, childcare, and menstrual leave. In many cases, corporate and political resistance to policies that support women, like paid maternity leave or accessible childcare, has been framed as a backlash against perceived special treatment. If the country truly cared about women, it would follow the same example of Zambia, which passed a law in 2015 allowing women to take a day off each month for menstrual leave, colloquially known as Mother's Day. Despite the advancements made by feminist and socialist movements, allowed many women to partake in the workplace continues to be structured around male norms. Linear career progression, continuous work without breaks for childbearing, and a lack of attention to biological differences. Neoliberal feminism promotes individual empowerment within a capitalistic framework, encouraging women to lean in and succeed within male-dominated structures, fundamentally challenging the system itself. This approach does not represent true feminism. Rather, it highlights why the Black family remains a target in this societal landscape. The ongoing struggle for equality and justice prioritizes the unique challenges faced by Black women, ensuring that the fight for rights does not come at the expense of our foundational values. By prioritizing individual empowerment within a capitalistic framework, marriage has taken a back seat, with money now becoming a primary focus. For white women, owning their hypersexuality might have been seen as empowering, but black women were already disproportionately impacted by propaganda and stereotypes that painted us as hypersexual and fast. Black women should not have adopted the same approach as white activists. Our struggles were different. Today's celebrities glamorize the idea of being a single mother or dismiss marriage as just a piece of paper. There's a growing belief that a nanny or a caregiver can replace the presence of two parents in the home. This isn't just about black men being removed from our families. It's a deliberate unlearning of the traditional roles for women and men in a family unit. Instead of fostering a collective household where more people share responsibilities, helping balance work, family life, society increasingly values material possessions, cars, glamour, wealth over the institution of marriage. And as a result, the importance of marriage is often overlooked, leaving us disconnected from its foundational role in building strong family structures. So now that I've discussed feminism and its effects on mothers and parenting today, I want to emphasize the importance of being vigilant about language. You'll often hear baby mamas defending their situations by quoting white socialists. It's crucial to recognize this and remind them that marriage was never solely a creation of the white man. Rather, the nuclear family structure was. Our ancestors were long marrying before slavery and will likely still be doing so had we not been influenced by misguided ideas. I urge everyone to critically examine our behaviors instead of running from the healing process. Confronting these realities is essential with growth. And I would love to hear y'all thoughts about this video. It's been a long one. And if you're interested in exploring more about politics in Black history, be sure to stay tuned for my next video because I want to discuss trailblazers like Hubert Harrison that we should know about. And it offers us a framework for the ideology that we need to progress in this world. And if you haven't seen my last video about US gangs and the idea that rap is worsening crime in America, I really recommend you watch it if you like deep dives. So thank you all for watching. Thank you all for joining me. And again, thank you all for all the love on social media and in my comments. Y'all have been like, make another video. And y'all, this is not easy. It's not easy to come on camera and make a video. I work very hard on my videos to make them interesting and get the information correct. Like y'all see my light was just off for like probably 30 minutes of the video, so that part of the video is gonna suck. But thank y'all for sticking with me and listening to this whole entire thing. Did you learn anything? Did you not? And if you guys have anything to say, I know I'm gonna hear it, so give it a like, give it a dislike, I don't care. It helps me, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Mwah.
Do men need women?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Do women need men?
No, absolutely not.
What would society be like without men?
I think the great men stay, the trash men go. Where's the trash man? Take them out.
What percentage of men are good and what percentage are trash?
10% are good. Yeah. 90% are trash.
Yeah. What would society be like without women?
Absolutely terrible.
What do you think feminism has done to modern day women?
I think modern day feminism is just an absolute disgrace. I think it's become a political weapon to push the narrative that women are inferior to men and women are not valued in society and women need to fight and be almost super aggressive towards men is completely wrong, because women are probably one of the most valuable things in society.
And feminism tells women that men don't believe they're valuable.
Feminism tells women that men don't value them as a whole, but I think feminism makes women feel like they're not valuable to themselves, and I think that's the worst message that you could instill in the younger generation.